Nurabank Foundation. My question is about the Jewish community in Turkey, and what about the situation about Jewish community? You know that political relations between Israel and Turkey are not living or aren't in the best times, and it's interesting. Is there a negative influence on the situation of Jewish community in Turkey in the context concerning the relations Tel Aviv and Ankara? Thank you very much.
Jerusalem and Ankara. Okay. Okay. Let's start now for the first round. Maybe we can another one. Okay. So I'll try to answer in the order when they were asked. First, I went there just a few days and I spoke with a lot of people, but still, as many people as you can speak during a few days. So I don't have the big picture. Okay. What I could see is indeed the willingness that, as I said, there is. They do not have, the Yazidis in the camps. They do not have trust in the Iraqi Kurdistan government, and even less in the Baghdad government or in Iraqi in Sunni Arab. They told me that yes, they wanted to have a safe zone or have autonomy. Most of them, in fact, they were speaking with me, coming from abroad, say, okay, help us to go in Europe, to go to Europe. Okay. What I could feel that there were a lot of discourses of justification of discrimination or persecutions against Yazidis, by even sometimes, which was surprising to me, I must confess, by human rights activists. There were discourses of some people who said just a very old racist stereotype, like, they are dirty. And they told it to me, knowing that I'm an anti-racist activist. It was surprising that it was so well accepted in the population that some people could say it, even to an anti-racist activist, that okay, these people are a little dirty, so it's normal that in a way they are a little away. There's been another kind of discourse of justification which was about this time of independence. We have to understand the situation where there are tensions from all great powers to prevent the population in Iraqi Kurdistan to get independence. It's been a dream of 100 years. It's been like numerous dead people, a dream for generation to generation, and now maybe the time where maybe they could get independence, especially after being the ones who have been supported by the whole war in order to defeat ISIS, which was mainly their fight, and thanks to them that ISIS was defeated there. And in this time, for these reasons which I explained before, the ISIS were not there to support the independence. So we understand why, globally speaking, this did not support independence. We understand also why people with this historical movements, having part of the population of the territory not supporting independence, meaning in a way weakening the government, meaning in a way playing the word of the great powers which are against independence, was another kind of justification in time of patriotism or nationalism. And there was something which is a little more perverse, I would say, about the children of the women who were taken by Daesh fighters, saying, okay, these children, of course we welcome them in the community, everybody is welcome, the religious leaders of the Yazidi community say everybody is welcome, but it's not because of that, because of them, but their fathers are people from Daesh and they have lived for some years within Daesh. So in a way they have been in the ideology of Daesh. Or maybe these people we cannot really trust them, which is another discourse of justification, which is not totally untrue. Their fathers are people from Daesh. They may have, of course, very complex feelings towards their fathers and towards what they did. We can understand easily that. Now to make it as not a psychological individual case, but to make it as like a political issue is something which is I think not totally honest and which is justification for more discrimination. So I could feel, but just with a few examples, not like big research which has been conducted by me about that after what took place, and maybe because what took place also, because Yazidis can tell at some point we've been abandoned by the Peshmerga, who are the heroes, and I think for very good reasons but not on this case, of course. You know, there's justifications of continued discrimination or being a little apart, and that movement for autonomy or maybe nationalist movement for to have a territory there may have some base because of that. We'll see how it goes. I don't know yet, but I understand that there is this about foreign policy. I don't know exactly what you allude to when you speak about what took place. You spoke about the French foreign policy about Libya and about Syria, especially. Of course, there are a lot of things to change. I fully agree with you. Regarding Libya, I think that the main fault has been it's not been to prevent the massacres which were about to happen by Gaddafi against its population, but it was to have not to have thought of anything for after, not to care about after. Unlike what was said, and unlike what people could have thought, that in fact the only point was to destroy Gaddafi power, but not to have thought in any kind of state or authority or organization, not to have any kind of involvement within that. And this is a very interesting case regarding responsibility to protect, because Libya has been one of the first cases where responsibility to protect has been evoked for the UN resolution allowing France notably to intervene in Libya. When there is responsibility to protect, you must act in order for the number of victims after the intervention to be lower than before. Because you cannot save everybody. There is not one system or one solution that there will be no more wars or nobody killed anymore. But it's relevant also after it took place, when you can evaluate. It's always complicated, because you must imagine what would have been the situation without intervention and what is the situation after intervention. This we can evaluate. Part of it is imagination, but it must be in this frame of mind. In this case, for these reasons, when you launch an intervention, you must make sure that you prevent a massacre. Like it was the case, there was an intervention when Gaddafi had launched his planes to bomb his own population. So it's definitely a very clear case of a need to apply the responsibility to protect by other states. But in fact, for it to be really implemented, it's not only to take Gaddafi out, but it's to prepare something after, and to make sure that the responsibility which you have to protect populations, you keep it there. I think the fault of the international community, and of France in particular, has been not to take their responsibilities, and not to have respected responsibility to protect. They do not protect populations today, they do not invest, they are not present, and the power brings responsibility. When you have your power, you have responsibility, and when you use your power, you have responsibility. They have not taken the responsibility, and in fact it has been a way to weaken the responsibility to protect, because it has been a way of, instrumentalization of this principle, at least partly, for other goals. And all the ones who are opposed to this principle, in fact all the ones who think that the value of life is less important than the value of sovereignty of states, have one argument, because in this case they are partly right. Regarding Syria, I think it is the opposite. I think the position of France was the correct one from a political point of view and from a moral point of view, even if I know that people do not like to speak about morality in politics, but when you speak about saving lives and the responsibility to protect, I think we have to speak about that. When there were clear vision that there were mass killings in Syria, the proposal by French president, supported at the time by Barack Obama, was to have a military action in order to prevent more mass atrocities. In fact, Obama betrayed François Hollande and made an agreement with the Syrians. Good lapsus with the Russians in order to prevent this military operation. And this is the exact opposite case of Libya. This is the case where, when there is no operation to stop the ones who are conducting mainly the killings, what is the situation? What it would have been if there would be an operation? Would it be the same as in Libya? Would the involvement of the powers of especially the United States and France be the same as in Libya or more? We don't know, we have to imagine. to see if it was relevant or not. I think that the best would be that they would have on military operations and then taken the responsibilities, politically speaking, in order to prevent more. But we could see that in neither cases, the good solution was, the good solution from the point of view of responsibility to protect was taken, and each time there is something to tell about that. But yeah, the faults to me about these two cases are there. In the first case, not to have taken responsibility after the military operation. In the second case, not to have gone into military operation to prevent more death and more mass killings. Well, I'm not sure to have understood exactly what your question was about the free, the visa free for the populations. I think that it is always good when populations can travel in it. We spoke a bit earlier about the fact that nearly all kinds of meetings between Armenians and Azeris can take place. I think it's always bad. And I think it's always better when populations, individuals can meet, better understand each other, and it is the best way to ease the tensions and open doors to see what solutions could there be to wars and to operations most of the time. It breaks all the representations which are built in times of position and of wars. Representations are created of the enemies, and I think that meeting on an individual base, getting to know more situations, is the best way to destroy this. It doesn't destroy the fact that there are interests which are different, that there are groups, identities, that there are conflicting interests for these groups and nations, but it allows to ease. And the more circulation, the more rights the people, I think the better to better understand and to try to find solutions. That's just like the principle, I would say, point of view.
Just one clarification,
sure.
Because the question was the following. You outlined the policy of the Turkish leadership, saying that they are interested in having these minorities, these refugees in East for different purposes and so on. Mr. Gabrielian just mentioned another expert who says that Erdogan is interested in opening the borders for that group to go to Europe and to stay there. And of course we can say that this visa-free regime for refugees has a lot of other dimensions. But with this respect, do you share this opinion, or will Europe do that? It's not about free movement. It's not about meetings and so on. Thank you.
Okay, I understand better. Thank you. Well, I don't know if Europe will do it. And maybe in the frame of mind of Erdogan, it's a way for him to weaken the Kurdish movement, saying, okay, part of the population will go. So the configuration of the population there will be weaker. There may be that. If individuals want to use these rights, which could be open to them, then I think it's legitimate, and the issue will be different than now. If we take into example like the diaspora, of Armenian diaspora, the Armenians are strong thanks to the diaspora, because they are mobilized, and because it brings a lot of connections with a lot of states. It allows them to speak in a lot of countries, to mobilize a lot, and it brings more support for the recognition of the Armenian genocide. There's been a lot of human rights and democracy groups, of course, but there's been mainly, or strongly, the Armenian diaspora who has been mobilized in all countries for that. So in a way, the game will be different. It will not be a way to just win the game. Thanks to that, the picture will be a different one. If the policies on the ground do not change, it will be just a different configuration. So the more rights for the individual, the better it is, I think. And indeed, it may mean to have a reconfiguration of the fight, of the structure, of the political structure, of the intellectual structure, in order to fight in a different way. If a lot of people from the east, from the Kurdish population, go to other countries. Okay, I spoke about a lot of the minorities and the state of the art of the minorities in Iran, in Syria, in Iraq. Yes, when it comes to only the point of view about the minorities, you are mostly right, I think, obviously. But what if you speak about the Jews? Because when you're a Jew in Iran, you are not very protected, on the contrary. And in Syria, they're not anymore.
You know, I cannot agree with you. When you are Israeli, you are not protected.
You're not welcome.
No, you are not welcome. But if you are a Jew, we have even
You have a seat in parliament.
yes, even
Wow.
a seat for the Jews in Iranian
By
parliament.
formality, guys.
Okay.
So, and we have a very, very rich community of Jews in Isfahan, for example.
Yeah, it's a rich community where 13 people were condemned to death because they were supposed to be spies of Israel a few years ago. And there is a very high pressure on all of them. And if today we have the size of the community in Iran compared to the one like some decades ago, it's not only because they're attracted to go to the US or Israel, it's also because there are some threats about that. And in Syria, it's the same. You have only the point of view of the minorities. Yes, there is diversity, and in fact, it's right that it's minorities which got the power. So, just with the entry point of the minorities, I think that's global thing apart from this case. I think that's the vision you have proposed is stick to the fight and is totally correspond to the reality. But there's not only this point of view, because there are more than 300, if not more, 1,000 people killed in Syria, mainly by Assad. It's not because they were part of minorities, it's true, but it doesn't mean that the regime is better when there are like mass atrocities, millions of refugees, and this number of killings and chemical weapons which have been used, torture which is being used, using the methodologies, by the way, which were invented by former Nazis who came to support the regime of the father and who invented all the methodologies of oppression and torture within Syria. Okay, it's not based on minorities, that's totally right, but something which, on the point of view of democracy or human rights, is absolutely totally contradictory. And I would say the same for Iran. I'm not sure that the influence of Iran is something which is positive for the rights of the individuals. If you see all the movements within Iran which contest the equality between women and men, all the women who are away want to have more freedom because there is like strong oppression against women. Cannot be considered as minority like other religious minorities. It's not the same thing, but the level of the rights, of the freedoms, is extremely low. And when you have also a president which stated some time ago that they wanted to have nuclear weapon in order to destroy Israel, meaning exterminate people there, from can consider that it's only based on a national point of view and not minority point of view, may be right, but still it's a threat which is a threat of massive extermination and something which cannot be accepted, although it's not from the point of view of the minority within the regime. So having just give you just these elements to tell that having a wider picture than what's taking place within a country, in this case Iran or Syria, allows to tell that in fact I think that with these criteria and on this level, although there are a lot to tell about the regime in Iraqi Kurdistan, a lot to tell, there is more space for freedom and democracy than in Iran, in Syria or in Turkey, although these countries are of course very different from a historical point of view and today from the very political point of view. Okay, a lot of complicated questions. Do I think that's the...
So thanks, Pico.
Well, I don't
about the map of the region.
Okay, if you have like 3, 4, 5 days, I could invite people who are more specialists than me. No, in fact, I don't have much to tell. I just have an observation, but an observation which everybody can tell that these borders are not relevant anymore, and that all the borders which came from colonialism are not there anymore. So everything is rebuilt. The internal borders with maybe agreements within Syria to have a confederation, maybe, which is one of the perspectives. The borders which are changing now in all countries, official ones or de facto ones. Yes, all of this is changing, but for sure, what is sure that no border can allow to prevent from genocide or mass atrocities. In fact, there is not one thing, or even 2 or 3 or 10, which would prevent from mass atrocities or genocide. In fact, there is not a good formula. There are always threats because there are always the elements which can lead to such events are present in different levels in all societies. The only good way is to be always mobilized and to have people who, who value, say, life over other values in all societies, in order to be more mobilized and to use more power in order to prevent that. So borders or any other issue will not be able to say, okay, let's have the borders, and now for sure there will not be mass atrocities anymore. Unfortunately, it's not the case. Otherwise, it would be maybe better, but it's not the reality. Yeah, everything is in motion now. And in this movement, we can see that two big elements. I'm not a specialist of that, but Europe is much less present than it used to be. So they're much less present in deciding who could be supported, what would be the borders and these things. And the Americans also are much less present. They are away, mostly compared to 10 years ago, away from the Middle East, and big powers which are now more ruling are Russia, Iran, and some others. But so the players have changed very strongly. The borders are changing, and I'm not sure that these powers will try to build the borders which will be at the benefit of other populations. They will draw borders which will be at the benefit of themselves, which is the game of all great powers. What the Europeans did for these agreements, what now they are going to do de facto for these agreements. Anyhow, it will not prevent or support more mass atrocities, but the nature of the regimes in Syria, in Iran, can tell us that, yeah, of course, there are big dangers. They are the ones who are ruling and who have the most power in defining new borders. In the region where there are all these violence, then yes, it's full of danger. Maybe with these new borders, we need to have more attention and more involvement to prevent more, not because of the borders, but because of the players who are behind this new game and their consideration for human life, minorities, and this. And about Jewish community in Turkey, I'm not either a great specialist of that. I know that most of the Jewish community has left now. It's a very tiny one. And yeah, so it's a very little one. I was in the trial. I attended the trial some 3-4 weeks ago, which was a trial, against an organization. And something took place for the commemoration of the Holocaust in Turkey. It was organized by Dorde, so a partner organization, along with the Jewish community. And in fact, the Durde organization, the activist organization, wrote a leaflet where they spoke about Kurdistan at the time, saying, okay, you commemorate the Holocaust, but look, you the state, what you are doing in Kurdistan. And for this, several people were put in front of a trial, 3 people from this organization, 2 people from the Jewish community, and 1 person who just walked there. So it was very absurd, but it was the first time when there was this trial of regular members of the Jewish community for something where was connected to Holocaust commemoration, which is something, should be well accepted. At the first hearing of the trial, the general prosecutor asked that they are released and that no more charges on them, which normally would be the case. But still, it showed that even against the Jewish community, there are some big threats. But now, anyhow, the community is very tiny, and people are going away when they can go. The case of Osman Kavala is also very important, not because he's like a famous person and a friend of ours, but because he's the most connected to Armenian genocide, who's now been attacked. So far in Turkey, they could, have oppression. They could, build the nature of the state without, touching to the Armenian community. Agos was not touched. Northern.
Grounding.
Yeah. No, but by the current movement of the state, they very strongly against the Kurdish movement, but there's not been a massive oppression of against the intellectuals or the civil servants or the ones whom they think or they want to think they are Gulenist. There's been some kind of protection. So because Armenian community is so little there that they do not need, in fact, to attack them in order to install the regimes they want to install. It was not needed to attack Armenians in order to have a referendum, in order to cheat for the result of the referendum and to change the nature of the regime. But now we can see that it's changing. Osman Kavala, and there's been also a case now against Agos. They are even, attacking slightly now, but still, the Armenian community, or people who are very clearly connected to the Armenian community, which just tell that they have like no limit, and even if this would bring international attention against them, they feel free to do it, because like all these regimes, when they start, the logic of it is so strong that sometimes it's difficult for them to stop, and also because they feel that they have impunity, because especially the big powers have interest because of the fact that they are part of NATO, because of the military alliance, because of the agreement about refugees. For different reasons, the big powers do not dare to be too pushy regarding them. So it shows they're testing the limits, and the limits have allowed them to go up until these minorities. So it's also a reason why we want to have a break of these agreements about refugees, because we think it's the core and the main issue why European states do not prevent the current power from oppressing minorities, including now Armenian minority.
Thank you for the floor is open for interventions as well, so you can share your observations. Please.
Okay, I have something to tell about the Yazidi people. So your speech was mainly about the refugees and the discrimination which is by the governments, but there is another side of this issue. So in the Yazidi history, this was such a common practice, the discrimination against Yazidi people by the Kurds. And this ideology is in the roots of Kurdish nationalism. So both in Turkey and in Iraq. In every part, this discrimination, this assimilation politics is different, but mainly Kurdish ideology, Kurdish nationalism consider Yazidis as a subculture or just an ethnic group in the framework of Kurdish big nation. And the same politics in Iraqi Kurdistan is about Assyrians and those that Armenians as another nation, and Armenian language also was recognized in Iraqi Kurdistan in the official level, but I had a chance to meet with members of Armenian community there, and so nationalism was too low. So Kurdish politics, Kurdish propaganda had such kind of politics to make all the ethno-religious group as a subculture or sub-ethnic groups of the big Kurdish nation. And there is we say that Yazidi genocide in Sinjar, the reason of the genocide was Daesh, ISIS. But there is another part also, because Kurdish forces